Welcome back to episode 45 of Working Towards Our Purpose. Today's episode, I want to talk about imposter syndrome. And before we get into that, always start these episodes with something positive. And so I had an interesting dream this morning, that I thought I'd talk about a little bit because it was kind of positive. So I had this dream that I was in like a helicopter and it was flying like super low to the ground, and it was like pretty turbulent, and I usually like don't like that, like, you know, anytime you like feel the turbulence in like a plane or in a helicopter. I would imagine most people don't really like that. But as the dream went on, I like kind of got used to it, and I was like, okay, we're not going to crash. Like we'll be fine. It's just like a little bit of, you know, stomach up and down type feeling. And then I woke up, and then I kind of thought nothing of it. And then I usually I have been getting into like just quickly Googling like, what do dreams about helicopters mean? So I did that when I remembered, and it said that dreams about helicopters represent like things are like taking off or looking up. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And I also thought that like it kind of felt like that was true, because towards the end of the dream, like I said, I sort of like became okay with the like moving of the helicopter and the turbulence of it, and wasn't like afraid of crashing anymore. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then I was thinking about it a little bit more, and I was like, I wonder like what that's symbolizing, or, you know, perhaps I could take that as like maybe my podcast will be getting more popular, or, you know, whatever it may be, calling more good into my life pretty much. And it was funny because, you know, in episode 43, that was the topic of the episode was calling more good into your life. So it was kind of, it kind of felt like a representation of that, which felt positive for me. So yeah. Anyways, I think like looking up dreams is kind of always a cool thing, just to like quickly see what certain things symbolize, and then kind of see what it means for you and like where you're at in your life. But yeah, speaking of where we're at, if you listened to last week's episode, you know that I was struggling quite a bit. And the thing that I was struggling with the most, I think, is imposter syndrome. So I figured that'd be a perfect topic for today's episode. You know, what is imposter syndrome? How do you get through imposter syndrome? How do you work through it? So yeah, getting into it. Last week I was not in a good headspace, and you know, I always like try to think about like why I, you know, get into certain mindsets, or, you know, why are certain things happening. Try to overanalyze, I guess, my internal sort of feelings and that sort of thing. So right after I did the podcast last week, I immediately felt better. And, you know, once I did like all the back end work of uploading it, I felt productive. I felt like I got through it. And then my week kind of turned around, and it was kind of interesting. And I was thinking about like, well, where did it come from? Why was I feeling that? And I think I kind of figured out that, as I mentioned in a couple previous episodes before, I was applying to be a TEDx speaker. TEDx is coming to New Haven, and I wanted to apply to try to get in as a speaker. And the deadline was last Friday. And so Monday, and, you know, even the weeks before that, I was trying to put together my application, trying to figure out what I wanted to say. And I think that I got stuck in a point, and I was like, what do I even want to say? What should I even say? Should I even be the one like doing this? Should I even be doing a TEDx talk? Why am I applying? You know, just kind of going down the rabbit hole of imposter syndrome. And then once I was able to kind of get out of it after I recorded my podcast on Tuesday, then I was able to kind of realize like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I was feeling imposter syndrome because I was applying to be a TEDx speaker, and I've never done that before. So, you know, that kind of makes sense as to why I would feel that. So yeah, what is imposter syndrome? For those of you who maybe haven't heard about it before, or maybe it's a newer term, imposter syndrome is basically your internal experience of doubting your own abilities. And yeah, that's kind of how it feels, like how I described, like you start questioning, like, why am I doing this? I'm not good enough to do this. I don't have enough experience to do this. This isn't something I'm familiar with. So, maybe somebody else is better off doing it instead of me. You feel like an imposter. You feel like you're not the person, that should be doing this or should be ready to do this. So it is something that sort of shows up in a lot of different facets, I guess, of my life. I also, the reason I wanted to do, an episode of this topic today is because it showed up again this week for me when I was doing something kind of silly, and like luckily it was kind of a quicker turnaround, and I was able to realize it was imposter syndrome faster than last week. But yeah, I was doing some research on like other podcasts out there like mine, and I started just like looking at all of these bigger podcasts and bigger followings and how they had more reviews and, people saying good things about them and everything. And then I started feeling like an imposter again, because I was like, oh man, I'm looking at all these other people's podcasts and how many episodes they have, whatever the indicator of success is that I'm deeming in that time as being better than me. And then I stepped away from it for a little bit, and I realized like, oh, I was doing all this research on these podcasts for something else. And then I got sucked into this, like, these people are better than me. I'm not good enough. I shouldn't even be doing a podcast, blah, blah, blah. So it's quite interesting how like it can kind of just pop up. But I was able to kind of recognize it a little bit quicker. And I was like, oh, okay, I was doing this research that kind of caused me to lead to comparing myself, therefore feeling like an imposter. And then it kind of caused me to change my course of action. And I was like, okay, maybe I don't need to be doing this research that I thought that I needed to be doing. And then all of a sudden it didn't really feel as important. And I was like, no, I need to focus on what I'm doing. What am I doing this week? And yeah, so that was another example of like how imposter syndrome showed up in my life, recently. So what do we do with imposter syndrome? Like what can you do about it? I think as I was planning for this episode, I kind of got these 4 steps that can help you work through imposter syndrome. So if it's showing up for you in your life, hopefully you can use these little steps to kind of get through it, and keep going on with what you're doing and what you want to be doing. So, the first step is just being aware of it and like accepting it. So I think that the first time that I heard about imposter syndrome, I don't remember exactly when it was, but I remember like hearing somebody describe what imposter syndrome was. And I was like, whoa, that's exactly how I feel. I didn't know that was a thing. So, somebody else just kind of saying what it was and putting a label to it made me feel like it's more okay to have that feeling, like it's a normal thing. It's not like a crazy thing. I'm not stuck in my own head of, not being good enough. It's actually like a thing that people have done research on and, sort of studies to see how this can affect people. So it is a real thing. And I think just being aware of what it is and being able to label it can help you accept it. So, if you've never heard about it before, hopefully, now you can put some language to that feeling and you can begin to start accepting it. And then the second step would be to know that you're not alone and know that like everybody has imposter syndrome. And it's, like I said, quite a normal thing. And I think something interesting to note is like, I hear successful people I hear successful people all the time talk about how they still have imposter syndrome. And so it's not something that like goes away when you're good enough, because being good enough is kind of a feeling. Like sometimes you feel like you're good enough and sometimes you feel like you're not good enough. Sometimes I feel like I'm good enough to record this podcast, and last week I didn't feel like I was good enough. But so kind of is just a feeling. So I think that it's important to know that like, okay, this is coming up. I can label it, I can identify it, but I don't have to like identify with it. I don't have to identify as not being good enough, to do this thing that I want to do. So, it is a normal feeling. And to get into the third step of, how to work through imposter syndrome, I think that we can kind of flip imposter syndrome on its head and be like, once we recognize that it's here, instead of feeling it as like a bad thing, we can take imposter syndrome and look at it as a sign that it's a good thing and that you're doing something that is difficult or something that is new or something that's challenging to you. Having imposter syndrome is showing up because maybe you haven't done this thing before, or it's something new. Like I said before, I was applying to a TEDx conference. Like I've never done that before. So of course I kind of feel like I don't know how to do it. It's because I'm pushing myself and I'm trying to do something that I haven't done. So instead of taking imposter syndrome as like a negative thing, we can kind of almost flip the sign and now it's like a positive thing, because it's like, oh, I'm growing. I'm pushing myself to grow. So this is actually a good sign. And then, once you're aware that it's happening, oh, here's imposter syndrome. Now I can like, instead of thinking of it as like a negative thing, I could be like, oh, maybe it's a positive thing because I'm pushing myself. And hopefully, that can give you some more confidence to keep doing what it is that you're doing. And then the last thing, the fourth step, I think the most important thing to think about when you're going through this too, and to kind of keep getting you to go through it and to keep going with whatever it is that you're working on, is to remember that if you let imposter syndrome win, then you let your gifts go unused. And, I think that that's such an important thing to remember, because when you're feeling like you're not good enough, you're not using your voice, you're not sharing your ideas, you're not putting your creativity out there. But those things, the gifts that you have, the strengths that you have, the unique spin on things that you have being put out into the world can help somebody else, can benefit somebody else, can put positivity into somebody else's life. Like I just said, how the first time I heard about imposter syndrome, I'm pretty sure it was on a podcast. And, if that person never made that podcast and I never heard about imposter syndrome, how much longer would I have gone thinking that like I was deficient, not having language to, put on this feeling of feeling like an imposter. So yeah, if you let imposter syndrome win, then, your gifts don't get to the world. And, I think that's kind of how we want to think through, like getting through imposter syndrome is, the first two steps, the awareness and letting go, and to know that you're not alone. Those are kind of just the first two steps of being aware of what imposter syndrome is. And then the last two steps are, it's the sign of a good thing, turning it into a positive thing instead of a negative. And then remembering that if you let imposter syndrome win, your gifts will not be given to the world. Those are kind of the the welcoming of imposter syndrome, and that's kind of how you get through it. So hopefully that made sense. That felt a little confusing to me, but basically being aware of imposter syndrome and then doing it anyways. That's kind of the takeaway, is that we can be aware of imposter syndrome, we can feel it, and then we can let it go, and we can do the thing anyways. And we can remind ourselves that, we need to give our gifts to the world, our unique voice to the world, because we can benefit, the people around us in a positive way. So yeah, I think, another little story that kind of reminded me, of this whole imposter syndrome and letting it go and working through it, is like I said yesterday, I was suffering from some imposter syndrome, and I was having a conversation with somebody, about a piece of writing that I was working on. And I had just like gotten out of the shower, and I was thinking about like comparing myself to all these other podcasters out there, and thinking like, oh man, should I even be doing this? Feeling like an imposter. And then this friend that I was talking to said something about how they like benefited from something that I was writing. And I was like, huh, interesting. And like, for whatever reason, it was like kind of a switch flip, a flip of the switch, however you say that. And I was like, oh, I made that and it positively impacted somebody. If I let imposter syndrome win, I can't do that. So if you take anything away from the episode, I think that's the big thing for me, is recognizing that like something that you can create can benefit somebody, but you can't create it if you don't let yourself create it. And these feelings of being an imposter can pass, and you can let them pass through you. So yeah, I encourage you to think about maybe where you're feeling imposter syndrome in your life. And, the next time you go to do something new, maybe if imposter syndrome comes up, you can kind of take these steps and work through it and do the thing anyways. And, don't let imposter syndrome stop you from what you're doing. It is a normal feeling. And, like I said, it's a sign of a good thing. So that's all I got for you today, I think. If I have one call to action for this episode, it would be to review this podcast if you listen to it and you enjoy it, and and you benefited from it. It's really easy on Spotify. You can just go click on the stars up top and review it. So if you're listening on the Spotify app, and I know that most of you are, if you would please just take a second to give me a rating. Because I have been made aware of, after comparing myself, to all these other podcasts this week, that I don't have very many reviews. And just the one thing maybe I would ask. But other than that, I hope you all have a good week, and I will see you on another episode real soon. Thank you for listening.